EF20 Online is sponsored by the Climate Council of Greater Kansas City and KKFI 90.1 FM, Kansas City Community Radio. Please welcome your host, Victor Dougherty.
Good afternoon, friends. Hi, and welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining us here today. There we go. Oops, sorry. Hello, folks, and welcome. And again, you are attending Earth Festival 2020, and I would like to take a moment to thank Bob Groves and the Climate Council of Kansas City for putting this amazing event on. One of the truly wondrous things was this transition from a physical festival to this virtual one. And so it's really been a tremendous labor of love. And again, thank you to Bob and all the folks who have made this possible. So welcome to Conscious Activism, blending ferocity and compassion. My name is Victor Dougherty, and I'm the director of the Temple Buddhist Center in Unity Temple on the Plaza in beautiful Kansas City, Missouri. And so welcome, friends. I'm really glad you're here today. This is going to be a little bit different from probably what you're used to. I've been attending many of the webinars and some of the different workshops and presentations today. And right now, what I'd like to do is take the focus off what can be done and what people are doing, what people should be doing, what people should not be doing, and move the focus more on the heart, on the conscious activists themselves, on the climate warrior, and to take a look at this process and how we can become more effective, more engaged, and at the same time less depleted, less overwhelmed, less in some cases, even defeated to some degree. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we work so hard towards a goal and then we keep getting set back, oftentimes the conscious activist can feel very defeated in some ways, overwhelmed and whatnot. So that's going to be kind of the focus for today in this particular webinar. And so it's also going to be a little bit different in that I'd like to open with actually just a few moments of meditation. And this would be a guided meditation, and I'm doing this for a reason. It's not just because it's meditation or because the Temple Buddhist Center is sponsoring this, but because it's applicable to our discussion this afternoon. And I do want to emphasize discussion because I'm eager to entertain some of your thoughts, some of your questions, some of your ideas around this because we can learn from each other as well as grow from the different questions that are passed around. So I'd like to begin with a little bit of meditation, just a few moments. And it's not so much that I want you to become aware of simply the spaciousness, okay? The opportunity to just release, let go, clear the mind, open the heart, and just take a few moments to cultivate that spaciousness. And the reason why, and I'll get into this a little bit later, a little more deeper, but the reason why is because when we spend so much time focused on a thing, focused on doing, focused on getting things done or counteracting what these people are doing or spending time in fear or anxiety or anger or hatred, when we spend all of that time, which is usually most of the day of our waking hours, then when we learn to create a moment of space to just give our mind, give our heart a break, and this just little reset button, so to speak. So here's what we're going to do. We'll take a few moments to go into meditation, and I will do a little bit of guided with it. And then once we've settled in, I would like to share a poem with you by William Wordsworth called Daffodils. And I don't want you to focus so much on the words themselves, meanings of any kind. I want you to focus on the feeling, on how it makes you feel, the expansiveness or whatever it comes up for you. So go ahead and let's take a moment, and wherever you're at, if you can, go ahead and just take a moment to close your eyes, make yourself comfortable, and let's take 3 conscious breaths together. A conscious breath is where you seal the mouth, breathe deeply in through the nose, hold that breath for just a few moments, and then release slowly so that the exhale is longer than the inhale. Okay, so let's begin. And just holding that breath for a moment, and then releasing slowly. And as you release, can you notice the body becoming more gentle and easy? Maybe the shoulders drop, or you sink a little deeper into your chair or your cushion. And a second conscious breath, holding that breath for just a moment, and then releasing slowly. And as you release, see if you can also release the busyness of the day, the going, the doing, the making notes, the planning, the listing, networking, contacts. Just release all of that for a moment. You're not discarding it completely. You're just letting that go with the exhale, just as easy as that. And a third conscious breath together, holding that breath, and then releasing slowly. And as you release, take a moment now to cultivate present moment awareness. There's just this moment. Nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to do, nothing to add to yourself, nothing to take away, no better person you should be, a perfect expression of consciousness. And just cultivate that, fully arriving in the here and the now, in this moment, releasing all other things. Clearing the mind, opening the heart, and just cultivating beingness, feeling the aliveness, that which animates this precious human form, just feeling that for a moment. You may find it helpful to do a body scan. So beginning at the crown of the head, moving down, relax the forehead, release any tension in the facial muscles, unfurrowing the eyebrows. Let the shoulders drop. Arms are graceful at your side with your hands resting on your thigh or folded in your lap. Take a moment right now and become aware of the chair or the cushion beneath you, supporting you, holding you up, grounding you. Relaxing the lower back, any tension in the hips, the thighs, or the calves. Take a moment now to notice your feet inside your socks or shoes, or that point of contact with the earth. Always a sacred point. And so I invite you to remain in a meditative state, just clear mind and an open heart, just receptive to the suchness of each moment. And as I share this poem with you, it's not designed to engage the thinking mind. It's designed to just provide perhaps a feeling, a sensation, an openness, or an expansion. I wandered listless as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in a never-ending line along the margins of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. For often when I am on my couch I lie, in vacant or pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and there it dances with the daffodils. And so now I invite you to take another conscious breath, holding that breath for a moment and releasing slowly. And as you release, I want you to just take a moment to acknowledge that feeling. Perhaps it was expansive for you. Perhaps it was just restful, joyful, or maybe longing came up or sadness. Today, this is what we're going to be working with, is working with the conscious activists themselves and talking about how to better to replete, to help refill that energy well that is so often the activists' source. And so the reason why I did this meditation and I also did the poem and whatnot is to help us remember and learn to connect with the body. So why does Temple Buddhist Center have a program, have a workshop in today's Earth Festival 2020? Buddhism and environmental activities have a very, very long history together. So I'd like to share a screen with you now, and I'm going to drop over here to my desktop. There. And so I'd like to begin with this to bring about this relationship with the environment, with climate activism, and with Buddhism. And this first thing I'd like to discuss with you is called Touching the Earth. And there's the story about the evening or the night of enlightenment when the Buddha sat underneath the Bodhi tree. The demon Mara was throwing all kinds of things, everything from desire and craving to fear to anger at the Buddha. And the last thing that Mara threw at the Buddha was doubt, self-doubt. And the demon Mara said, I have all these beings that will attest to my presence and to my completeness, to my control. And who do you have to testify on your behalf? Who are you to wake up? Who will support you? And that was the moment when the Buddha reached down, touched the earth, and said, with the earth as my witness, I and all things awakened. And the earth shuddered, and that was when the demon Mara was dispelled. And at that moment, the Buddha woke up and brought awakening into his practice and into his teachings and into the energetic realm of the earth at that time. And so touching the earth, this particular section now is about remembering our origins, Alan Watts said, an apple tree apples, the earth peoples. And so we are children of the earth. It is our origin. All the elements of the earth are also in this body, and this body will return to the earth. And so what's important to remember is that the earth is very resilient and regenerates. In fact, new strains of bacteria have been discovered at the Chernobyl radioactive sites. And these strains of bacteria are feeding on the radioactivity, something nobody saw could happen. And in that way, the earth is incorporating, bringing that in. We too can have, we have this capacity within us as well, because we are from the earth and we have those same qualities within us. Another person wrote about the story that I told you about the Buddha's awakening. This person wrote that this story of the Buddha and the earth bearing witness for the Buddha makes a profound point that a Buddha does indeed belong to the world. Truth, or the Dharma, is very exacting, but it is not, nor is it ever, against nature. The man and the woman who seeks awakening is in tune with the fundamental structure of the universe. And we see this represented so often in our indigenous peoples and how they, their relationship with the earth. And I so appreciated Sammy Aaron earlier, who did a shout out to the fact that we are here in Kansas City and are on the lands of many indigenous tribes that were here. So it's a remembering of this. And here's another point that I'd like to make on this whole subject of touching the earth, and that is this idea of good, bad, right, and wrong. The things that are happening now, so for example, let's take an apple tree. If an apple tree becomes overladen with apples, what happens? Well, branches break. In the same way, we could look at the shift of the planet itself, the shifting tectonic plates, or what about disease? Disease will set in if there are too many apple trees in a particular area, a disease will set in. And in this way, it helps you create more space. The same thing happens with a herd of deers. So when we take a look at things like disease, when we look at some of the things that are going on right now, the point that I'd like to make is that these things are happening and they are unpleasant and they are sad, but they're also not wrong or bad. And the reason why I say this is because where we're going in this discussion this afternoon is to learn to come from a place of love, compassion, and true clarity in seeing things as they really are, not as we want them to be, as they quote unquote should or should not be. Because this is the energetic source of the activist who moves from a place of love, compassion from the heart, not from a place of fear, greed, anger, and hatred. And so when we deem something wrong, something bad, then we create an adversarial relationship. So when we learn to understand and see the reality of things, that when there is an overpopulation, then things like disease come into play. And this is a very natural event. This is one of the laws of nature, is that nature seeks balance. It finds the middle way. It does not adhere to extremes, and so therefore it will automatically seek out a balance. And so this is an important aspect that as children of the earth, we too have access to, is balance, finding the middle way with this. Something else I'd like to share with you regarding this idea of touching the earth or rooting ourselves in the earth is that when we root ourselves in the earth, we also take time to root ourselves in good people, in communities, in organizations like this one, EarthFest 2020, like all of the wonderful and amazing groups that are sharing workshops with us here. These are the people that we cultivate, These are the groups that we spend time with, and we do so not because they're good and someone else is bad. It's because our heart moves us toward in this direction, because we resonate with these people and these groups. Okay, so I'd like to move on now to the next item on my agenda, and I want to move through these so that we can get to some time of discussion. So if you have questions or notes, please write them down or go ahead and toss them into the chat room or the question and answer room, and we'll get right back to them. But next I want to talk about working with emotions. In working with emotions, there are a number of things, emotions, ranting, reacting, expelling energy that is angry or hateful or even fearful or anxious, bears with it and carries with it a charge. And not only that, but it expends a tremendous amount of energy. So when I talk with activists, many of them are like, gosh, I just can't keep up with all this, or I'm just so depleted. I'm so tired. And so that's because they're drawing on the wrong source. The emotions themselves can simply be processed, purified, and released, noticed, not acted on, not propagated. And when we do this, we entrench those emotions. So this reactionary way that a lot of activists, at least in the beginning, start out with, carries a charge with it. And it might relieve pressure, but it generates a negative contribution. Think of it this way. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this mind-body organism as being a garden. And it comes with all these seeds. There are the seeds of fear and the seeds of anger and the seeds of hatred, but there are also the seeds of love, compassion, clarity, and understanding. At any given time, what seeds are we watering? And so when we act upon anger, fear, and hatred, then we're watering those seeds, and that's what we are cultivating. And so when we recycle despair and concern and grief and anger, it expends emotional energy and generates no return on the time spent and can deplete us. So I want to talk about one of the things that we can use is something called RAIN, R-A-I-N. And the way this works is that when you find that you have been triggered, let's say you turn on the news and some new policy has been passed that just totally wipes out all of the clean air or clean water elements that have been put in place by administrations in the past. And you find yourself moved to anger instantly. One of the things that we can work with, of course, first is just mindfulness. Be aware that you have been triggered. Become suddenly, first usually there's a reaction, oh, I'm so angry, and there might be some storming around, but if you can become aware of, okay, whoa, I'm totally triggered. Once you take that conscious breath like we did when we first started, you can actually move into RAIN, which is take a moment to sit down, and the R in RAIN stands for recognize. Recognize that you have been triggered. Recognize that right now you are really angry or fearful or anxious. So first recognize that, okay, I'm in a state right now. Next, the A in RAIN stands for allow it to be here. And the reason why this is important is because any energy you put towards, oh, this shouldn't be happening right now, or resisting this anger, is actually going to feed it. It's going to water that seed. So allow it to be here. And you just clear your mind, open your heart, and recognize it. Okay, right now I'm angry. Absolutely. You can allow that to be present, or maybe it's fear, whatever it is. That's all right. Because the next step is the I in RAIN. This stands for investigate. And so the investigate means to notice, where does it show up in the body? Where is its epicenter, so to speak? Maybe it's in the belly area or in the chest. Investigate it. What's its size, its shape, its color? Does it pulse? Does it vibrate? Is it solid? Is it soft? Be present with it in the body. Now, on a side note, notice what you're not doing. You're not caught up in the mind, which is blaming somebody, creating an enemy, creating a plan of action. Oh, I'm so going to get back at them. I'm going to do this, do that. All this negative energy and action steps that are now being your planning and your scheming. Notice that you're not doing that. You're investigating this feeling of anger and how it affects the mind-body organism. And so as you investigate this and you become aware of it, it brings us to the letter N in RAIN. And the N stands for non-identification. In other words, if you can be aware of it, then it's not who you are. If you are aware of it, then you're not caught up in it. You can work with this anger. You can purify it. You can breathe through the epicenter, wherever it is. Sometimes the anger might feel like a heavy brick. And so you can actually reach in, take out that brick, release it, drop it on the ground, and purify the anger. Let it move through. And then, once you have done that, you can begin to respond to the situation in a very skillful, clear, loving, and compassionate way. So in other words, you're not putting more anger, fear, anxiety, and hatred into the universe, into the energetic blanket that surrounds the planet, the globe. You're not putting more of that energy into our system, the energetic system itself. So when these things happen, it's important to first just become aware of it, become mindful of it. It's even possible to prepare. Let's say you're about ready to turn on the evening news, or maybe you're going to go to an event where there are members of both sides, such as the American Public Square's debate on climate change, which is a part of Earth Festival 2020, where they bring people of different opinions together in an effort or an attempt to promote civil discourse. So right as you prepare for that, you can become aware, okay, this could be an opportunity for me to be triggered, for me to experience anger or hatred or fear. So if you can prepare for that, you can be ready and be mindful when it happens. Okay, so that's RAIN and working with emotions. So next, it was letting me move forward. Oh, there we go. Okay, so next is awareness. This is where we become aware of our intentions. You see, in our Buddhist practice, one of the things that we work with is intention. And the reason why is because nothing happens without an intention. Some of our intentions are unconscious, and some of our intentions are conscious. But it's becoming aware of that intention. So, for example, some activists and folks that I have worked with have this incredible charge. They're so angry at what's happening, and they're angry at the administration. And so when we work with what is our intention, sometimes, and this can sometimes be very difficult to look at, but the climate warrior, the spiritual warrior, the person who is truly and deeply interested in bringing about more positive, sustainable lifestyles in the community is actually concerned with those things. But some people have become concerned with getting back at or trying to teach someone else a lesson, and they have lost their true way. And so that is why it's very, very important to become aware of your intention. What is it? What is your intention in doing, saying, in volunteering for this thing, for that thing? And so also awareness of our reactions when people say things or to different groups, maybe even some of your reactions right now, becoming aware of the reaction itself. And the place that we're working on here is to respond to the climate crisis, not react to it. Oftentimes reactions are just more fear, greed, anger, and hatred that are putting back into it because there's an enemy. There are bad people. Instead, we respond. And the way to do that is to become aware of our intentions and our reactions. And at the same time, we can become aware of what it is that we are consuming. In other words, when you're watching the late night pundits on TV, or you're watching the news, or you're listening to radio programs, how much of it is actually new information, and how much of it is feeding a self-righteousness, feeding a redemption that you are on the right path and they are on the wrong path. It's important to notice those things, because those are the things that can deplete us, can have a negative effect on our energy. And I'll get to how we replenish that source here in just a few moments. So that is awareness. Next, I want to talk about the heart. And what I mean by this is that the human heart can hold all of the players, all of the activities, everything that's going on. The human heart is vast and has room for all of these things. One of the ways that we can cultivate the heart is, for example, loving kindness practice. And the way loving kindness practice works is in the Buddhist practice, and I want to take a note because I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but in Western Buddhism is more of a practice like yoga. It's not a religion. And so I have many people of different faiths that actually practice with us because they can still have a faith and yet practice Buddhism. So in our Western Buddhist practice, one of the things that we work with is loving kindness. And this is where we send loving kindness first to ourselves, safety and security, well-being in both body and mind, happiness, and a gentle ease to life, to ourselves. Then we do that for a friend. And then we do that for an acquaintance, somebody that we just met in passing. And then we send loving kindness, well-being, safety, security, ease, and happiness to a difficult person in our life, a challenging person. Could be a boss or a coworker, a political figure, and we send that to that person. And then finally, we cultivate the heart by sending this to the entire world. That's one way that we can cultivate loving kindness or cultivate the heart. Another way of taking a look at this is something that is known as empathic overwhelm. In other words, many activists are very feeling, deeply sensitive people. And a lot of times, the reactions that they're having are in reaction to the Earth's difficulties and challenges that it's having right now. It's almost as if the empaths are reacting to the cries of the planet, both animals, plants, beings, the Earth itself. And so empathic overwhelm is looking at all this multitude of things that are to be done, all this multitude of activities, volunteering, different causes, different crises, and it can become very, very overwhelming to the empath. And so one way to deal with that is to return to the breath, return to the body, touch the earth, cultivate the heart. What is it that brings joy to you? Spend time singing, dancing, meditating, time in nature, cultivating the heart. Because the heart can hold all of these things, but if we're caught up in our head, then that can become overwhelming. You see, the heart was designed to be broken 1,000 times. And so, unfortunately, we spend a lot of our time resisting that, hearing the news of some different change in policy or finding out about a species that has gone extinct. And when we think about that and we ruminate on that, we're cultivating fear and anxiety. Instead, we simply feel the sadness in our heart and then return to rain, where we become aware of what that feels like, purify it, process it, and then release it. And maybe there is weeping. The body knows what to do, and we simply create space to allow it to do that. And then we can respond to what happened in a clear and concise way, instead of being angry and fearful. And so cultivating other heart beings as well is helpful. And so this is your community, people that you don't come together to rally about how bad and how awful these people are or what they've done or this thing that happened. Instead, we come together to share with each other what that felt like. And in this way, we cultivate the heart. And then the heart can expand and become a very important source of energy for us. All right, and I have just a couple more here. And so finally, as we move into these last sections, I want to talk a little bit about truth. And I want to share with you this reading, which comes from the book Perfect Brilliant Stillness by David Karse. And this is about the truth, the reality of things, of what's going on. The truth that there is no good, bad, right, or wrong. There is just what is happening, the reality of this moment. Oftentimes, we see things as we want them to be instead of the way they are. That is a classic aspect or characteristic of the climate warrior. And so when the climate warrior can develop truth and cultivate that, then they can respond in a ferocious way that doesn't have an enemy. It doesn't have a person that needs to be conquered. It is ferocious in its tenacity. It is ferocious in its creativity. It is ferocious in the large number of networks and peoples that it can respond to. So let me share this with you in regards to truth. The ultimate understanding is a seeing and a knowing rather than a comprehending. And it does satisfy all questions, though it does not answer them. Answers become as irrelevant as the questions themselves. Both cease in the seeing. Do not judge the questioning or the longing, the seeking or the sadness, the impatience or the resistance, the opening or the letting go. It is all the perfect unfolding as it is. Only watch it and know that you are not that. You are loving awareness in which all of this arises. You are quiet, compassionate space in which the life that you think of as yourself unfolds. This still expanse of acceptance between the thoughts is all that is. That is what you are. And let the love that is this stillness that you are embrace you. Let it fill you. Let it overcome you completely. And so this idea of truth is that we work to not lose ourselves in the dispersion, lose ourselves in the surrounding. We practice mindfulness to be in touch with what is wondrous, what is refreshing, what is joyful. And then we speak our truth, not saying that you are doing a bad thing, instead speaking our truth. It is important to me to do this or to say this. So it is a totally different place of where we are coming from when we engage other people. We stand in our truth. Because see, it's easy to debate facts, figures, numbers, things like that. But when a person comes from a place and says that I am doing this because my heart moves me in that direction, I am working towards sustainability. I am recycling. I am volunteering because this is where my heart moves me. Then we don't create an enemy, we don't create an other. Instead, we stand in our truth and we come from that place, from our hearts. When we speak what is true for us and with what is within us, then we also can say yes and we can say no with commitment and authority. It is important to make a choice, commit to it, and act. And from a place of love and compassion, not from a place of anger and fear. And I have two more here. The final one here is non-attachment. Think of this phrase as I share it with you. Your current knowledge is not changeless. Avoid narrow-mindedness. Seek out belief systems and their resulting thought patterns and cultivate a love of learning. Truth is found in life, not merely in conceptual knowledge. So oftentimes the activist is angry because someone is entrenched in their ideas. In exactly the same way, we can entrench in the idea that what I'm doing right now is not helping because we're not going to be able to bring about any change because there's these people who continue to fight us, who continue to love money and power. Instead, we have become entrenched in the same way. We do what we do because our heart is moved so, not because we're attached to an outcome of some sort. The outcomes will take care of themselves as long as in every moment we work towards consciously responding to what is ours to do in this moment. And so that is this idea of non-attachment. And what's amazing is when you look at people, for example, and forgive me, I've forgotten his name and I had it earlier, but there's an African-American gentleman who was actually moving in and through and around the Ku Klux Klan, making friends, finding out where they're coming from, and then sharing what's in his heart. And he is single-handedly, one person at a time, transforming each of those individuals, because once they learn and understand what's in his heart, they can no longer hate. In the same way, this is a very powerful path for the conscious activist, is to engage those who believe differently or have entrenched opinions. And if you are open and can hear what they're saying and where they are coming from, then we can share what's in our heart. And in this way, we begin a conscious dialogue, which will have very transformative effects. And finally, cultivating the sacred. Again, time in nature, time in silence, in Sangha, time in gratitude for the opportunity to be a conscious activist. Gratitude for the opportunity to step forward, be counted, and share what is important to you, what you are passionate about for the planet, for the animals, for the plants, for the air, and for the water. I'd like to share this with you in closing, and then we're going to move to some sharing time. This is written by Jack Kornfield, author of A Path with Heart. If we see the world as sacred, which is an expression of the spiritual life, then gratitude follows immediately and naturally. We have been given the extraordinary privilege of incarnating as human beings. And of course, the human incarnation entails the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, as it says in the Tao Te Ching. But with it, we have the privilege of the lavender color sunset, the taste of a tangerine in our mouth, the almost unbearable beauty of life all around us, along also with the various troubles and difficulties that it shares. But you see, life keeps recreating itself. We can either be lost in a smaller state of consciousness or in what Buddhist psychology calls the body of fear, which brings suffering to us and to others. Or we can bring the quality of love and appreciation, which I would call gratitude, to life itself. And with this comes a kind of a trust. The poet Pablo Neruda writes, "You can pick all of the flowers, but you cannot stop the spring." Life keeps recreating itself and presenting us with everyday miracles. So my friends, stay amazed at the unfolding of life in each and every moment. And we do what we do, not because there are bad people, there are enemies, there are wrong things happening. We do what we do because it's in our heart to do so. And so now I'm going to remove this screen.